Okay, good afternoon or good midday. It's 12 o'clock. I'm from Estonia. My name is Tarmo Koppel. I'm very delighted to be here. Today is the Independence Day of Estonia, and there is a square of Iceland in Tallinn. Maybe some of you know this. But there is a very good reason because Iceland was the first country to recognize our country's independence, re-independence in '91. So for that reason, every schoolboy and schoolgirl in Estonia knows how important country Iceland is, and it offers me a great pleasure to be part of this initiative that Svein and Lennart and many others are part of. So my work is about how to reduce and how to mitigate exposure to radio frequency radiation. And let's say that this is the plan B. If you are not successful in removing wireless radiation or Wi-Fi's and mobile PlayStation antennas, then I'm your guy. So we will be looking to some of the results of our work, what the radiation is, how it propagates, and if we have some time, we can also do some demonstration here for us to understand. So yesterday when we arrived, and we had a very nice walk in Reykjavik downtown, we took our measurement devices with us, and we thought that let's see what is Reykjavik the same down as Stockholm and Tallinn, or is it different? But for our great pleasure, it is not different because the radiation is quite significant in downtown, and it seems that the strongest radiation is within certain areas of the downtown, namely the squares. I'm not sure why the mobile operators place the antennas mostly in squares, but usually they substantiate that they want people to have very good connection. But actually, what we measured is very, very high. It's like it was even above our meters measuring capabilities. It was above 6 volts per meter, which is the Satimo MS Spy 200 exposimeter, which is a quite expensive device, costs about 4,500 euros, and is quite capable of measuring many types of radiation of wireless type, but it indeed exceeded this level. So, okay, here we walked. This was like a 20-minute walk around the downtown, which took about 1.5 kilometers. And here we came to the square of Ingolfstorg. I hope you understand my pronunciation. So here we see the outtake of this Ingolfstorg, and indeed there you can see the 6 volts per meter was exceeded here, and you can see many colored lines here. Each of these represent one specific frequency band. So actually this is, if we consider the exposure, we have to sum all of these fields together, because if I'm exposed to one frequency, but maybe there's another frequency source on the other hand, so the effect is accumulated. And we need to sum, and this is the dotted line that you see here. And as in other cities, the greatest exposure is from mobile protocols. We have here GSM and UMTS 900 band and 1800 band, also UMTS 2100 band, and also interestingly DECT band, which is a synonym for the wireless landline phone, but probably you have this 1800 band for use for some other mobile communications, because DECT phones cannot give off such high readings. So, okay, and here is a bar graph from this Ingolfstorg, and you can see indeed how high the 1800 GSM band and X band, the UMTS band go. So if you want to have nice recreational area, then Ingolfstorg is not the area to hang out. If you want to follow electro-hygiene, if you're okay with the radiation, then there is no obstacle from us. So, and we made some photos from yesterday's walk, and you can see that there are not many antennas, but surely there are like at least two that we noticed, and these are the ones probably that give off this amount of radiation. And of course, in Reykjavik, these antennas are quite well maybe hidden, because if you walk around in other cities, they're more pronounced in the cityscape. We can see a lot of antennas. So maybe that's good, that if you don't see them, then you think there is no problem. So now let's look at some basic principles about RF radio frequency propagation. So radio frequency wavelength is much shorter than 50 Hertz wavelength that we have on the power cables. And this means that usually we get partial exposure over the body. The typical exposure for the office worker is presented here, the upper part of the body exposed, since the majority of the radiation is inbound through the windows. And this is a same office space, workplace during the day. And also this graph presents that around the midday, the exposure is the strongest. This is when the most traffic is used, because if there is less traffic, less people are using their wireless devices, then the radiation may also drop many folds. So Leonard made a comment today to me in the breakfast table that you should close your zipper when you come to present your work. So I replied that this is a professional habit, because if we go out to do measurements, and we do a lot of measurements, we always keep our zipper open. You understand what the zipper is? Yes. Because the zipper is a metallic piece, and it is like about of this length, which is like 13 centimeters, and it will resonate in the radio frequency field. And in our line of work, it is well known that you may have problems afterwards in your reproductive area if you keep your zipper closed. So this it will resonate, and you will have multiple exposure from the base station or whatever you are measuring. But this also applies to women. The pros are also, they may have metallic supports, and these supports will also start to resonate. It would be, there's a hypothesis around the scientific community that increase in the breast cancer may be to do with the pros, because these are resonating in the radio frequency field. And of course we have metal jewelry, metal frame glasses, and medical implants that may act as antennas in the field. So the basic principles on how to assess the exposure is, of course, how strong is the electromagnetic field, what is the distance to the source from the point of view of the person that we are assessing, and for how long the person stays near the source. If we think that we have safety limits that protect us, then you should know that the safety limits protect us only from the short-term effects. So it means that maximum it's like half an hour, not more. Because the basic scientific knowledge based on which the safety limits are drawn upon is short-term effects, and it's explicitly stated in the legal documents, in decrees and in laws that regulate EMF exposure safety, that these limits only protect from the short-term effects. So you should not expect that you will have long-term exposure protection as against the effects that were discussed by previous speakers. So the basic principles on how to reduce the exposure, the strategy would be to minimize the usage of the RF sources indoors, and if we have outdoor sources, then we should block these. And in which order we should do this? We should follow, of course, the basic safety principles, which means that first we should start to remove the source. If that's not possible, we should create more distance to the source, because the field level is dropping exponentially with the increase of the distance. And if that's not possible, we should build a shield against the source. We could shield the walls, we could shield roofs, floors, windows. It's all dependent on from where the radiation is coming from. And of course, we should consider that the most attention should be paid on places where people spend most of their time. It's not the shielding and the interventions may be costly, and that's why we should not spend too much effort on shielding like corridors and bathrooms, toilets, where people do not spend a lot of time. So actions, how should we reduce the exposure? So first, this is like Svein requested from me a small list of what to do. First, we should switch off the device. If that's not possible, let's take an alternative device or technology. For example, there is now light Wi-Fi coming up, so this might be a good solution. Also, in case of the present Wi-Fi, there are many routers where they have the green button to reduce the output power. But if that's not possible, we should position the device where it least affects people. So we create distance. And of course, this principle is not followed in the square where we showed the very high exposure in Reykjavik. It's totally not understandable why mobile operators tend to create these hotspots in the city. Why do we need 6 volts per meter in this square? We could do like 0.06 volts per meter and still have a good reception. But it's convenient. It's convenient to just place one antenna and increase this power and not to invest too much, because the law is allowing them to do that. So if that's not possible, we should try to shield the radiating source. But of course, if we use Wi-Fi and if we start to shield the antenna, I have a Wi-Fi router here. If you shield the antenna, of course, we lose the transmission. So it's quite illogical. So, but if we have a neighbor or a neighboring facility who is using a strong wireless source, then we could, of course, shield the room, the premises where people spend their time. And the last resort would be position people away from the areas. If you cannot shield the room, then we should remove them from this area and place them in other places. When we go out and do exposure measurements in the schools, we often see that the school board, teachers, and of course students themselves, they do not know where are the hotspots. There might be that there is like very hot, in the sense that very strong radio frequency area, like in this narrow place, but just 2 meters away is like 10 times less. So there should be very good awareness where are the hotspots, and the hotspots should be avoided. Because if you're sitting like in 6 volts per meter area or 0.6 volts per meter area, perhaps this is a crucial point for for this person not to develop the problems that were discussed previously. So the exposure and its effects very greatly depend on many factors. We have, this is a very representative picture, we have outdoor, okay. We have outdoor sources, we have indoor sources, and we have personal devices. The most that the person can do is to control how he or she uses their own devices, because the most exposure we get from our devices like tablets, PCs, and mobile phones. Everything less is much less affecting us. So here is an example of common radiation sources. We have like Wi-Fi routers and mobile sticks, networking sticks for wireless LAN and 3G, 4G. And the most, what we see when we follow how people use these devices, they do not understand what is radiating and what is the most hot spot. And if people would understand that, for example, this area here is the most radiating part, they would place this away from themselves. So good safety understanding and understanding of where the radiation is coming from is very, very important. So here is one study that we did. We tested the radio frequency fields from the mobile net stick in different distances from the person. The person is sitting using the desktop computer on the table, and of course most of them they put the net stick right to the side of the PC, the laptop. But if we would increase the distance to 1 meter, 5 meter, or at all place it outside of the premises, we should have such decrease in the radiation exposure. So we made measurements for all bands, 2G, which means GSM data, 3G, UMTS, and 4G, LTE. And we can see that the radiation, the scale is in peak milliwatts per square meter here. We can see how dramatically the radiation drops as soon as we great distance. Of course, we have to also account for the wavelength of the field, because in 2G the wavelength is around 1 meter because the frequency is 900 megahertz. So in increasing the distance to 1 meter does not create as great effect as in case of 3G and 4G. But we can see that already 1 meter creates a lot of decrease. And if we place the net stick away, we have a USB extension cord and we place it away outside of the room. This is what we see. We see very strong decrease in the field, 3.9 milliwatts per square meter before and 0.1 afterwards in case of 2G. So this, of course, also applies for different reception levels, because if we, in principle, have 1 bar, 2 bar, 3, 4, 5 bars, this also is reflected in the output power of the wireless adapter. If we have only 1 bar, then of course the wireless radiation is also stronger from the adapter, because it knows that it needs to put out more power to gain connection with the router or the base station. But we can see the effect in all reception levels. Exposure is dependent on the antenna location and of course also the radiation pattern of the device. And we are sorry to say that many producers do not make good devices. They do not place antennas in a way that it would decrease the exposure to the person. For example, if I put this net stick onto my computer, it would most probably affect me as much as the area here. But why is technical solution would be to focus most of the radiation away from me. So this would already, the design of the device would allow at least 10 times less exposure. So here we tested different mobile devices, tablet PCs, netbooks, laptops, and smartphones, and we saw that the strongest radiation was from the smartphones and tablet PCs, because you hold them closer to yourself as compared to the laptop PCs and netbooks. Reduction is also dependent on what traffic protocol you use. For example, if you are just connected to the internet, there is not much traffic. If you start to, let's say, read some news, like text, you will start to have some spikes, but still the dosage of the radiation, meaning the summation of the field, is not so great. But after you start to watch video, or you start to upload a file, or maybe take a Skype call, you definitely will have orders of magnitude more exposure dosage, as shown in this last segment of the slide. So the exposure is also dependent on the traffic, and we can reduce it by minimizing the traffic. It means that if you really need to use wireless connection, then it's not so good idea to have it Skype call or video conferencing or something like that. So, okay, what could we do? We could use an external antenna. We could attach an external antenna either by the cable connection or by the patch connection to the wireless modem, and it would redirect all of this energy away from the user. Also, we should consider what is the indoor condition of the premises where we are using. If we are inside of a metal casket or metallized walls, then we will have probably a great deal of reflection and multiplication of the exposure. So automobile is a very good example of a premise where a person is using a wireless device inside, and all of this radiation most of this is radiated back from the casing of the car. If we would remove the antenna and use an outside antenna, we could 90% of the energy redirect outside of the car. And this is one measurement that we did in car use of wireless device, and we found that not only the user of the device gets the very good amount of this radiation, but everybody in the car. And this also points us back to the issue of how does the RF affect our cognitive abilities. Mostly very severe health problems are discussed, like cancer and chronic illnesses, but cognitive effects, how aware is the driver of the road, I think it's also very important. Here we show that the reception quality is also very important. For example, if we have very bad reception, only 1 bar, this is exponential gain, we will have a very strong radiation. But if we will have a full coverage, full reception, like 5 bars on your smartphone or your tablet PC, if it's using wireless to the mobile base station, then the radiation is so small that it's even the effect of using external antenna is not evident, as you can see here. So if you have good connection, if the mobile base station is nearby, then it's from the other side of the coin, it's also radiating you less. But of course, you will have a chronic exposure from the street, because it's 24 hours the base station is there. So what we found is that the best scenario, the optimal scenario, is when you have basically 4 bars. 4 bars. It means that the base station is relatively close, but not too close to create very strong exposure indoors. and the output power is also not so strong. So also network protocol is important. Usually we see that the 2G generation transmission creates more exposure as relation to 3G and 4G. But of course we also need to consider the bandwidth, because in case of 4G we have a much wider bandwidth which exposes us to much more frequencies. Now, how to reduce the exposure if we really want to use Wi-Fi? Then one option is to use directional antennas. So here is a homemade directional antenna using a sieve from the kitchen, and it's actually very effective. So everything that remains back from the what does E mean? End. Okay, thank you. So this means that everything is radiated away from the source. So we have some commercial antennas available. So you could use these on the router or on your laptop device or any other wireless device. And you could radiate only the parts where you have the router, and you may be on the other side of the antenna, and this releases all the exposure or relieves you from all the exposure that you exposed. And also, if you have a router on that area, we could use absorber materials indoors, because nowadays the most important thing is what is the materials of what the building is made. Is it reflective, transmissive, or absorbing? The best solution is to use absorbing materials, because if we use reflective materials, then everything that is inside will remain inside. But if we use absorptive materials, then we will the walls will absorb. There will be no reflections, and we could have many times less radiation. And in conjunction with directional antennas, the people indoors would have very low exposure levels. And yesterday we had very important anecdotal evidence that maybe Iceland has very rich in one important mineral. I brought this along. This is a lava rock. This is a lava rock that, based on this anecdotal evidence, is quite possibly absorptive material, because it's porous. It is semiconductive, and the radio frequency field is trapped inside of the material. It is not reflected back. Of course, this may not apply to all lava rock. The investigations must be made on which type of lava rock is absorptive. But as I heard that in some places you have anomalous drop of the cell phone coverage where there is lava rock. So this is quite an excellent indication that there is absorption going on. So thank you very much. I hope you learned something, and I will release the podium.